Hi, everyone, and welcome to our session at SMX Next. I'm Kelly, your moderator for today, and I'm excited to guide you through what promises to be an enlightening conversation on man versus machine, finding the right balance in AI-driven marketing. In today's rapidly evolving landscape, automation is transforming the way we approach paid media. Our discussion today will explore the delicate balance between automation and human judgment. I'm thrilled to have two outstanding experts with us today. Julie Warnecke, founder of Found Search Marketing, whose agency specializes in leading paid media strategies for enterprise brands, and Frederick Vallaeys, CEO of Optmyzr and author of The AI Augmented Marketer. Together, they will share their insights and experiences on navigating this exciting yet complex landscape. Now, without further ado, let's dive into our first question. So let's start broad. How do you both see the current balance between humans and machines in paid media today? Fred, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, and thanks for the intro, Kelly. And so the AI Amplified Marketer, just to be clear, that is my upcoming book. It's going to be in February. The manuscript has been written. Hopefully some of it is still relevant by the time it hits the bookshelves in a couple of months here. But yeah, so really happy to be here. And obviously, this is a big topic, right? So man versus machine, and where do we stand? And I think we're obviously at a breakneck pace of innovation where things are changing so quickly. And we've got these existential threats where Sam Altman, founder of OpenAI, is basically saying 95% of marketers are going to be out of a job within the next 5 years. And when he says they're out of a job, I think really means they're not going to be doing what they're doing today. It's just going to evolve how they are as marketers. And so it's a fascinating time and a really interesting time, an exciting time for me to be in this space, because I think there's so many new directions that we can take things in, and we can use this technology to do things that we previously couldn't because we had skill set limitations. So I think it's going to be an exciting couple of years here.
Awesome. Thank you. Julie, what are your thoughts?
Well, I definitely agree with Fred in that I think the only thing that's constant is that everything is changing so fast and seemingly like by the hour, by the day. I think for as much excitement that all of these opportunities and all this changing technology brings, I think it brings just as much trepidation of like, not only just from an individual standpoint of like, what does it mean for me, or how am I going to continue to add value? But whether you're an agency or you're an organization, spending the media dollars in marketing, you're saying, how do I adapt to this to gain a competitive advantage? And at the same time, how can I adapt to this and gain a competitive advantage in a way that doesn't hurt us? Like, how do we find the right pace in terms of how rapidly we adapt, how quickly we move on these things? Do we sit and watch them unfold? Do we need to be on the bleeding edge of this? And so I think, it's an exciting time in the space for how much change is happening. I think it definitely just is going to continue to reinforce the need for finding that right balance. I don't think humans will, go away or not be needed. I think it's just the way people will engage with the work and with the strategy will definitely evolve many, many, many times over. I think over time and in rapid succession, I think of evolutions. We're going to go through many miniature ones.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question. So let's talk a little bit about where automation can excel and where automation can really help things. So Fred, where do you truly see that happening today?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've come through many waves here, right? And certainly it makes things faster and helps us get the things done that we know we should be doing. So in the older days, that was machine learning based automation that was driving smart bidding. And the machine is obviously able to ingest more data and consider more data points than us as humans can. So that's where it's so powerful. But where we're headed now is certainly that generative direction, right? So it's no longer just about figuring out numbers. And by the way, LLMs are really bad with numbers. You can never really trust them. But what they are good at is writing stuff, and not just writing and being creative, but also turning that into a video. Like lately, I've been playing with Sora 2. It's still invite only, but I got an invite. But it's cool because you make a cameo of yourself, which is basically a digital avatar, and then you give it a very short prompt about, make a video of me jumping on a trampoline and going out of control. And I was like, that would be a brilliant way to illustrate the notion of bounce rate. Is your bounce rate out of control? Something we as marketers all care about, right? And it comes up with such funny videos, and it's just amazing, right? But it enables us as marketers to sort of push the boundaries of what we do. And sometimes people also then say, well, AI is going to put the creatives out of a job because, these people, they've learned how to use Adobe Premiere and they're really good at it. And I'm like, wait, but is that really a creative, or is that someone who takes the vision of the director and knows how to use the software to produce it? Right? And so I think we have to think much more in terms of these AI capabilities as taking our vision and handling the slog of the execution. And so if you truly are a creative, then have the idea, know what to prompt to the machine and let the machine make it for you, right? That's a much better time or better use of your time as a human, I think, than going into Premiere and spending 6 hours like editing a video together when you could have made 30 amazing videos with amazing ideas and let AI do all of that editing for you.
And I think that's interesting, Fred, because take an example like creative, I think what ends up happening is the optimization levers, the location of those levers will change, but how do creatives or agencies or organizations adapt to that in terms of like how they revise and adapt their workflows, and also how they can use creativity and imagination and a little bit of stomach for risk, I guess, from time to time, depending on what we're talking about. Is there's a comfort zone in the optimization levers we're all used to pulling. And I think immediately, I think a lot of people go to like, well, if I can't do this and if I can't do that anymore, then how can we ensure XYZ will happen the way that it's supposed to? So I think, as exciting as all of these things are, there are a lot of different optimization levers that have to be revisited. And there has to be a lot of synchronicity, I think, with the strategic layer of the organization, also the implementation layer, to get in sync with those things.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And so, Julie, you and I, we prepped for this session here. One thing I did is I recorded you and me talking for half an hour in Fireflies. And at the end of that meeting, I said, okay, rather than me doing all this work of saying, like, what should the questions be? What should be the topics that we cover? We've actually spoken about that now for half an hour. So why not give that transcript to the AI and let it do that work for you? And so that kind of illustrates the loss of control. What came out of it was like, here's what you should talk about. But if we had done a good job, and I think we did do a good job in that half-hour session, then that should fully specify, that should tell the AI, like, these are your controls and levers, and like exactly how it then executes in terms of implementing that. Like, who really cares?
Right.
What you should spend your time on is like setting the boundaries, making sure it understands the goals, and it should do, if you've given it the right context, it should be able to do the job.
And it sort of moves the job from like the process and the slog, like you've said, of producing that to experimenting and getting better at the prompts and the setup and how you interact with it as it's giving you feedback to make it better.
Exactly.
So instead of you having to do your homework for me, we let Fireflies do homework for both of us.
Right. And I think the future of work, the future of work is like people talking to people. And so, and I'll actually ask you this, Julie. So a lot of agencies, they don't really seem to enjoy, maybe enjoy is the wrong word, but like client
go
meetings.
Easy now. Go easy.
Yeah, go easy. So, but like client meetings, right? Like oftentimes an account manager might be like, oh, okay, we're having a client meeting and I enjoy talking to the client, but the thing I don't enjoy is the fact that invariably a bunch of work comes out of these meetings. And so can we shift our mindset and be like, well, that meeting is actually me fully figuring out what needs to be done. And again, then the AI can help me with it, rather than seeing it as the thing that precedes a whole bunch of work falling on your plates.
Yeah, I think it can retool a lot of, what the purposes are across like agency engagement with a client, and it can speed up, a lot of different work cycles, but also I think it can enhance and find errors and anomalies in strategy and like ensure better alignment across the team more quickly. Because I think over time, you know, especially if you end up working and having the privilege to work on, let's say, a really large enterprise account that has a lot of moving parts to it, but instead of having that where there's maybe 2 or 3 people that hold the keys to everything, you can operationalize a lot more of the strategy and the knowledge, and it can kind of take on a life of its own versus having to be always driven by individual seats or individual ideas.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then, Julie, are there any other areas where, from an agency perspective, that you think automation truly makes the team's job and life easier today?
I don't think there's any part of agency life that's easy, but I mean, you know, I guess, you know, I'm sure a lot of you out there understand, if you're on the agency side, there has been no shortage of changes in, I think, technology and trends within media buying. But I think in places where automation can make things easier and make life a little bit easier, I think just the sheer scale that information can be processed, like Fred said, some time efficiencies can be built in, but you have to have places to transfer that time where it's going to continue to add value, versus just a subtraction of what people are needed for. And so I think that's a constant challenge for agencies and on the client side, on the organization side, alike. And I think there's also a lot of pressure from across an organization in big times of change like this to say, what are we doing? How are we using this? How are we using this to get better? And I think it's really important to just have alignment on like what optimization area you're working for, because I think a lot of this stuff can get lumped in and say, oh, look at all this stuff AI is doing. But there could be really vastly different categories in supporting the work that is being impacted. So like efficiency is one thing, that's great, but also with a lot of automation and a lot more AI integrated into the work, you also have a lot of risk of oversteering as well. And so, you know, there are a lot of things you can then maybe take your hands off of, but there are other things you need to watch maybe a little bit more closely in the event that, you know, the thing is sort of going and going and going, and you kind of get lost in the feedback loop and you don't understand really where to turn off the switch or what would trigger that. Yeah. So I think it kind of goes both ways.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into our next question, which is, we've talked about, you know, a lot of the benefits and ways that automation is shining today, but let's talk about the flip side of that. So maybe some areas where automation has gone too far. And so then back to you, Julie, can you share a moment where that AI or automation may have created a risk and maybe human oversight came in and had to save the day?
Sure. Yeah, I think I'm sure a lot of you out there have examples of this. And I mean, no offense to our really good friends at Google who are innovating and putting out new product, you know, all of the time. That's really exciting to try. But we've had instances with PMax campaigns, you know, where obviously you're moving the optimization levers that you're used to pulling, and you're sort of taking that away and just giving Google, you know, the outcome that you want, and it takes care of kind of the rest. But we've had examples with AI Max and PMax where, you know, the innovation and how quickly things move on that side, it doesn't align with maybe what the goals of the campaign truly were. So where we're trying to optimize for a certain outcome, we get a lot of leads, say, like outside of the geo territory that we're restricted on, and some different things like that. Or we get a lot of volume and quality drops off, or AI Max is creating ads, you know, on our behalf, but we don't have the typical like brand control intervention opportunities. And so we don't really see these things until they're in market and running, and we have to watch them and stop them because there's a tremendous amount of risk on the client side to have creative in market that hasn't met certain criteria for the brand. And so we have a few examples like that as we try that and roll these campaigns out and saying, okay, let's see what this thing can do. But without human oversight And if we just took our eye off the ball totally, the technology itself doesn't solve for everything currently.
Yeah.
We're still in experimentation mode, I would say.
Great.
Yeah, and a lot of these automations, there's really no more choice in whether you use them or not. And then so sort of in the early days of Google automation, it was like, yeah, you can switch that on or off. Nowadays, I mean, if you're going to do PMAX, it just inherently comes with a bunch of automations. So the way that we as a tool company and software really think about that is about automation layering. So Google is going to do what benefits Google as a whole, as an ecosystem, right? So within that, there's going to be good things for advertisers, but they're also working for shareholders. They're also working for the consumers who are using the search engine. So it's not fully aligned with you as an advertiser. And so where Optmyzr then comes in is like we say, well, we're here for you. Our automation works only for you. You tell us what the goals are, you tell us what the parameters are, and we can layer that on top of Google systems, and we can identify scenarios when, yes, maybe you have automated bidding, but like, did you notice that your bids have gotten out of control? Like, there's no way that you can be profitable at these individual CPCs, even though your TROAS may still be hitting, right? But basically you're on a decline of profit, even though you're still on a run up to maximizing revenue. And maybe that was your goal, maybe that's not, right? But you should be able to tell us that and then have someone who watches your back. And so for us, we really think about that in terms of what we call PPC insurance. It is the tool that has your back, and it can do things like detecting last year, just before Black Friday, Google's OCI, offline conversion import, mysteriously broke. And Google didn't know, and it's just all of a sudden these customers have reports of no conversions. And guess what happens to your bids? Well, no conversion, so your conversion rate is down, presumably. So your bids go down. And all of a sudden, right before Black Friday, your volume is going away. And this is the period of the year that you were hoping to make your numbers. And so we had alerts in place that very quickly caught this. And so then humans started looking at it. What's happening? We tell Google, Google's fixing this. And Black Friday was saved because you had something that was watching your back, right? And so that was a combination of human plus tool that enabled that to happen.
And that's interesting, Fred. Have you found too, like in the suite of tools as you've developed your roadmap for Optmyzr, do you think like, why isn't this in the Google platform? Like, is it just sort of obvious that sort of the layering and the filtering that Optmyzr does to help advertisers on a tremendous level sort of fine tune their layers and their filters? Is it because it's normally like curating and limiting Google maybe more than they would want? Or like, do you have a fear that all of your tools that you build will just sort of end up in the UI?
We've been doing it for 14 years.
Right.
And there's always something that Google is not quite doing exactly right. I wish I had millions of customers, but I don't. But that's okay. For those customers that I do have, we are solving a very specific problem for them. And while Google at the same time is building solutions for millions of advertisers. So that necessitates a level of generality and sameness, which is not what most people listening to this conversation care about. They care about a completely different thing than most advertisers. And that's who we're helping, right? And that's who we're building for. And so there's always an opportunity to do things just slightly better for that audience.
That's really interesting. Yeah, and I think you can tell that interacting with your tool, that's sort of advertiser-centered versus all advertiser-centered tools and products. So that's interesting.
Awesome. Okay, so we've talked about automation, some good and some bad. So let's talk about how humans can continue to add value as, machines handle the mechanics. So like, Julie, do you want to speak to, from your perspective, where humans can currently add the most value?
Okay. Good question, Kelly. I think, from the humans adding value standpoint, I think that it's not a super far jump from, I think, what we've already had to do over the course of the last, 5, 10, 15 years in terms of technology advancing and how we interact with it. And I think the human value add and the value point shifting from here will create and do all these things for you. the machine's taking that over. I think the value that has always been there and that is still there is you need strategic decision making and sort of fleshing out the actual business strategy and filtering out like the use of technology in the media buy and how you get the absolute most out of it. And I think humans continuously will be needed to steer the technology. I think, to use some of Fred's analogies with, how you pilot this stuff, someone still needs to be at the controls and understanding the underlying laws of physics, I guess, of like what's impacting what and how the things all work together in order to drive the optimizations. I don't think you can ever have hands off of the wheel and all of this stuff running itself.
For sure, you need human in the loop in these Gen AI days. And so I'll bring it back to what I wrote in this all the way back to 2018, but it was the human roles with AI, which back in the day was machine learning, but I think they still apply very much today with generative AI. It's you have to be the PPC doctor. And so one thing the doctor does is they understand what's wrong with the patient. And as an agency, your patient is your client. What is it they're trying to achieve? And then you have this plethora of options. And 5 years ago, that used to be, okay, I can have these 7 types of bid management in Google. Which one am I going to deploy? That was easy. Now we're looking at hundreds of AI tools that can do all of these things. And each of them is a little bit better in one way. And they all keep leapfrogging each other. So as an agency, it's just sort of understanding how do you connect the problem of the patient with the medication or the tools that you can deploy to solve that. Like that is a huge value add. And if you work at an agency, I would challenge you, like make sure you spend some time every week learning these tools, looking at these tools, understanding how they work so that you can come up with new innovative solutions around that. And then the second role is the PPC pilot. And in the PPC pilot, okay, so now you've deployed these AI tools. But like Julie said, you can't be asleep at the wheel. And the reason we have a pilot in the plane is not because the plane can't fly itself. It could take off, it can land, it's fine. But what happens when the controls, when the data goes wonky, right? That's when you need a pilot to override and make sure that these 200 people get back safely on the ground. That is your job as an agency as well. It's like we're dealing with multi-million-dollar campaigns in many cases. Like that money matters. And Google's happy to spend $10,000 like learning something new when you could have been like, well, we already knew that. So don't do that experiment, like go in that direction. So that's the PPC pilot. And then there's the last role, which is the PPC teacher. And now with generative AI and machine learning, it says learning, right? So who's teaching it? And even when it's no longer like that sort of teaching the machine, but you as the teacher, how do you prompt? How do you do prompt engineering? How do you do RAG, retrieval augmented generation? All of these new concepts in generative AI that make the outcomes much better. And so that is another role that you have is how do you work with these machines in a way that they actually produce the best outcomes? And then you put all of that together. There's actually a lot of stuff for humans to do. It's just not exactly what you did 2 years ago, but it's still immensely valuable.
Yeah. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think about our position on our, from an agency perspective, I feel like our job is to be client aligned and really truly understanding not just the client's goals and what they're trying to achieve, but how they do that. So like operationally, how are they structured? How do the campaigns that we run impact their day to day, not even just on the marketing team, but maybe it's the sales team and it's a fulfillment team. And so when you're taking new information in from Google and they say, okay, to test this out, we need a whole bunch of data. So we should put all of these campaigns in so we can learn really fast and really bring you results. And everything's going to be just amazing, but it just needs all of this. And so, I think someone has to be knowledgeable of the technology and how it behaves and thinks and works to the extent that we can, connected to the client business side that says, okay, we can't just test all of this at once. And here are the very real consequences if we go that route. And so I think Google's job is to keep our eye on the prize, the ultimate prize of really advanced technology, using all of this cutting edge stuff that they have rolled out. And I think the agency's job is to filter through that, help steer it, learn how to steer it, and not get the client fired, off of their own job on their side because the agency didn't advise them properly of like what the impact would be on the operation if we did this great test, So I have a client that used to say, my reward can't come in heaven. My reward needs to come this quarter. And so, we would love to test with you, Google, and all of this sounds really fun, but the money's actually real. And the results actually have a real impact on the day-to-day. So we have to calibrate this in a way that everyone can succeed, but like we have to like moderate the risk also. So that's something I think of often when I review the pitch.
Awesome. Thank you both for those. Very, very, very insightful. So it looks like we're just at about time. So any final thoughts, parting words, or key takeaways, Julie or Fred, from either of you to wrap up today?
I mean, for me, it's for everyone out there, and I take this advice myself every single day, just get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and don't be afraid to embrace the challenges and take some risk. And I think we're all learning a lot every single day as this unfolds. And I think everyone's going to end up in a better place, running better campaigns and understanding more about how to do a really good job of deploying media in a way that just delivers better and better returns.
Yeah, exactly. Because like Julie said, think about the outcomes you're trying to achieve, and that should be your focus. That is your value add, and then figure out how the machines can help you achieve that desired outcome. Think less about the mechanics of the work you do and more about the purpose of that work and why you do it. And so I think ultimately, and I've said this many times before, but it's a good way, I think, to end it. You are not competing against AI. You are competing against people who use AI better than you do. And that's why we're here today. That's why we're talking about this, and hopefully giving you some ideas on how to be better with that AI, stand out, keep more clients, keep your clients happy every quarter. And that's what it's all about, right?
That's it. That's the whole ballgame, Fred.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Julie. Thank you, Fred, again. And thank you, everybody that joined our session today. If you want to learn more about Julie and the team, you can visit the website at foundsm.com and visit Fred and learn more about what he's up to and Optmyzr tool at optmyzr.com.